Hello and welcome to another episode of Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzie and I'm your host for today's show. So another jam-packed match week during our festive periods, which I'd like to speak about today. So we can start off with probably a surprise result for many people is Arsenal versus Chelsea. So fantastic victory for Arsenal. It's their first win since 1st of November, which was against Manchester United. In terms of the first half, I think Arsenal were more of a dominant team, even though Chelsea did have a couple of chances. So Mount hit the post with the free kick, which is quite unlucky. I think the commentators as well thought that he went in, but very, very unlucky there. Clumsy tackle from Reece James on Tierney. I would have expected a bit more from him in that aspect. But Lacazette fantastically converts the penalty in. Xhaka, who's not very prominent in the score sheet, to say the least, scored a fantastic free kick, smashed it in 25 yards. Saka scored a lofting shot that went over Mendy with his right foot. I think afterwards he did say that it was he did mean it, but I think it was a slight hint of luck in the way he kicked the ball, as I think he was trying to aim to cross it to Martinelli, who was at the far post. But we'll give him the benefit that it was a nice goal, and the cross from Hudson-Odoi, which was a great finish by Abraham, who had to improvise with a chested finish there. It was a consolation goal in the end, but a fantastic victory for Arsenal, to say the least. I think this should help springboard their season now, but after one victory, it's never enough, to be honest with you. So we'll see how their season pans out. Regards to Chelsea, they've only won once in the last 4 games, and 3 of the losses were away. So that is quite a concern for Frank Lampard right now. I have seen some of the negative reactions from Chelsea fans already saying Lampard out. I think that's a bit far-fetched. It happens when you have a number of signings. You do tend to have a dip of form here and there. And because of the congested fixture list as well, it's just not working out for them. So I know a lot of people have been hammering towards Havertz and Werner in terms of their form. Werner, for me, will eventually come good. It will take him a bit of time to get used to playing at that level. But yeah, I think overall good win for Arsenal. A lot of their fans were jubilant, and they deserve to celebrate at this stage because it's been a long time since they've had a victory. So a good win for them, and let's see how their season goes on after this. Next match is Leicester City against Manchester United. So I actually predicted a draw, but I predicted 1-1. So there's more goals than I anticipated. But yeah, it's a very entertaining game. So Rashford did have a good chance in the first half where Bruno did a nice lofted ball into the box. It was a clear header for Rashford, but he heads it over. So that's probably one area of his game I think he needs to improve anyway. But I guess he made up for it later on where a nice pass was given him through the right-hand side, and it was a nice clinical finish in the bottom corner. So for me, Rashford was a constant threat throughout the game and definitely played to United's strength in terms of trying to stretch play on the wings, but also in the central areas as well. So he had a very, very dominant game during against Leicester. A surprising factor was Bruno losing the ball for Leicester's first goal, where a bit of sloppy play and control from him that led to Harvey Barnes taking advantage of the situation, and he smashed it in 20 yards left foot into the top corner. Harvey Barnes is one of those players that did really well for me last season and is continuously improving as a young player as well. And he's pretty much in the starting lineup every game. So he had a decent game. Good to see him doing well as well. So I just mentioned Bruno had a bit of sloppy play during the game. So did Tielemans as well, where he miscontrolled the ball, and Fred in a through ball to Rashford, who latched on, smashed it, but great save from Schmeichel in my opinion. So could have been, I think Rashford could have got a hat-trick at least during that game. But yeah, the final goal for United part anyway is Cavani passing a nice ball to Bruno, and Bruno finishing it clinically as always. Probably one of the most informed midfielders right now in the Premier League, without a shadow of a doubt there. So another goal for him in the score sheet. And then Perez providing a great cross for Vardy, and a clever finish. You know, I'm a big fan of Vardy. Very smart in the way he finished it, because a lot of players probably would have smashed it in and it would have gone over the bar. But he sort of took a lean back and made sure that his connection would go towards the bottom corner, where the goalkeeper might have been a bit slightly offside because he had a defender near him as well. So yeah, I think overall a fair result. Two very strong teams. I would say for both it's a point gain rather than 2 points drop there. So, but if you're a Leicester fan, United fan, love to hear from you. So send me some comments if you disagree with me there. So the next game that I'd like to speak about is Man City versus Newcastle. So a very dominant performance by Man City. To be honest, it could have been a bigger scoreline if you watched the game. So the first goal was Sterling dribbling into the box, cutting back and passing the ball to Gundogan, who's neatly slotted it in the box. Ferran Torres, who was probably one of the best players in the game, in my opinion, threaded a nice free ball to Kevin De Bruyne, who was one-on-one, but the goalkeeper, Darlow, who made a fantastic save and made some great saves throughout the game as well, to be honest. Especially the last minute, not the last minute, but towards the end, when Aguero came onto the pitch, and it was his first touch of the game, and he had a shot few yards from goal, and normally but done a fantastic diving saves to deny the striker. So he was one of the probably positive factors in terms of that Newcastle performance, that the scoreline was not as high as it could have been. And Cancelo, who was bombing down that right flank constantly throughout the game, crossed the ball. He got initially blocked by Fernandes, and Ferran Torres picked up the loose ball and finished it in nicely. So for me, a dominant performance by Man City, who are notching up constant wins at the minute. So expect to see them climbing up the league a bit more now, especially with the champions, who I would like to speak about now, dropped some points today. So obviously I'm a Liverpool fan, so for me, very disappointing result. I would probably say we were quite dominant in the first half. We had a lot of chances to take advantage of, probably scoring a few in the first half. Second half, we lost the possession quite a lot. We weren't really active in terms of the attacking half. Our first touch, our finishing wasn't quite there. It was quite disappointing to see how we performed in the second half. I think the injury of Matip, who's unfortunately constantly injured, had a big effect in the rhythm of our play. And then when Reece Williams was introduced to the game, he was pretty much, I don't think he was mentally ready to come on. I don't think he was expecting to play today. So he didn't seem as focused as he normally is when he plays. And his sort of missed pass led to the corner for West Brom. And Ajay, who scored quite recently for West Brom as well, who's a dominant figure in the box, scored a goal, obviously hit the post, looked like it was going to come off the line, but it went in. So for me, it's 2 points drop for Liverpool. Very, very disappointing. Obviously, I'd like to say the Mane goal was the only positive light in terms of the whole match. It was great control of his chest, and he smashed it in the goal. So it's good to see Mane pick up a bit of form as well now, as he's not been firing. I think before last week, he hadn't scored in 10 games. So it's good to see him in the score sheet again. But for me, you know, it's arguable to say how West Brom were quite defensive. Nevertheless, it's a Sam Allardyce team. So the formation that was set was like a 2-7-1, and they pretty much parked their jumbo jet from the beginning of the match. So it was always going to be a tricky game for Liverpool in terms of that aspect. But for me, we should have scored a lot more goals. We had chances to be a bit more clinical and score a lot of goals during that game. 2 massive points dropped from our part, but for West Brom, I'm sure they'll be over the moon at this point, as this will definitely help their battle for relegation this year. So we can speak about the next game, which just finished an hour ago. It's Wolves versus Tottenham. So to start off with, I think Tottenham set up really well in the first half. They were pretty dominant. Tactically, I think they were right in terms of how they were playing. And for me, the star highlight was Ndombele. So I know he scored first goal where Patricio may have been slightly blindsided because there's a number of bodies in front of him, but nevertheless, it was a good strike on goal. In terms of his play, he has been playing quite well recently anyway. But I love the way he controlled the midfield. He was definitely showing his presence on the pitch. And for me personally, I think his passing ability is underrated. He has great ability on the ball. So it's good to see that he's showing his true form this season, because when he was bought last year, I was one of the people that said that Tottenham have signed a top player, because I've seen him play for Lyon and he was just amazing in that league. So it's good to see that he's playing well right now. At this stage, for me, his fitness is still a bit of a question mark. He tends to get substituted in the hour mark. Today was the 70th minute. So that's something he needs to kind of work on in terms of his fitness. But in terms of what he offers to the game and what he offers to Tottenham, he's pretty much a dominant player for them and a top player that they have to make sure he stays fit and is in the team all the time. So good game from him, nevertheless. So they were, first half was good from Tottenham. Second half, I would say I'd give it to Wolves, where they were very, very attacking. In particular, Neto and Podence, who've been their star players of the season. Constant threat throughout the second half. And the goal came with nicely, where Saiss scored a great header from the corner. And for me, it was a deserved equaliser. They could have nicked it at the end as well, with Fabio Silva having a great chance that was point blank. And he just had to head it in towards the bottom of the corner, but hit straight at the keeper. So for me, if that was Jimenez, that would have been a goal. May have been a bit harsh on Spurs. I think 1-1 is probably the fair result. But for me, I think Wolves fully deserve to have gotten the equaliser, as they showed amazing play towards the latter stages of the game. So that's no wins in 4 games for Spurs. So for me, I wouldn't say that's alarm bells, but it is a slight concern in terms of how they're challenging for the league, because you would have expected Tottenham to be a bit more higher up. Well, they are quite high up still right now, but I think with these kind of draws and defeats, it's slowed down their momentum. So I wouldn't say alarm bells, but it is a slight concern as teams around them are picking up points. So Liverpool are still top. You've got United and City that are making consecutive wins recently. So it is a concern for Tottenham, but I'm sure they'll be back. So that's a little sneak preview of my team of the week there. So we can go on to that right now. Let me put that up for you guys. So last week I did a post of my team of the week, and I got a bit of abuse saying that I was quite biased because I had about 4 or 5 Liverpool players. But when you win 7-0, that's what happens. You do get more players from that match alone. So just wanted to make that clear there. But yeah, so on to my team of the week. For me, Martinez has probably been one of the best goalkeepers this season. He was injured for a while, but he's just come back and he's kept 3 clean sheets in a row. For me, a lot of people say it's a mistake from Arsenal to have sold him, but they still have a good goalkeeper in Leno. So it was just a thing where Martinez was too good to be a number 2 at the club. So they had to make that difficult decision. But for me, he's a solid goalkeeper, definitely top 10 in terms of the Premier League. And was very pivotal into the way that Aston Villa played. And he kept, especially in the first half, Eze and Zaha were troubling the goal. So they had a few shots on target. Nothing to kind of cement a goal, I guess. It was more or less shots on target. But, when you've got a goalkeeper who saves it so convincingly, just breathes confidence throughout that team. So for me, definitely deserves to be my team of the week. There were a few other goalkeepers, like Darlow for Newcastle had a great game, even though he was in the losing side. And Loris had a good game today as well. So there could have been a number of candidates, but for me, Martinez really stood out for me. So I've got a back 3. So my left side and right side aren't traditional left side centre backs, but in this sort of team, I just have to try and fit everyone in. So Tierney for me is my left-sided defender. For me, he's been one of probably the only consistent Arsenal players this season where when you see him play on the pitch, he always gives his all. He's like a warrior in their team, constantly working down that left flank, but defensively makes good tackles as well. Obviously, defensive record isn't great for Arsenal right now, but for me, he's definitely been a shining light in terms of how they play. So for me, definitely deserves to be in the team of the week because of the win that they had against Chelsea. So Courtney House from Aston Villa, for me, has to be in the team as well. Another dominant performance from him. Scored a goal where Watkins headed it onto the crossbar, and then House just got the rebound and then finished it in from like the near post. So for me, another clean sheet for Aston Villa, but as well as Martinez, he plays that role as well. Slightly disappointed to see how Mings got his red card there. 2 silly challenges on Zaha that could have been avoided. But despite being 10 men, I think House was one of the reasons why they were able to keep a clean sheet and then go on to win the game as well. So for me, definitely deserves to be in that team of the week. Cancelo, who I mentioned earlier, was fantastic on the right-hand side, was bombing forward, had great play in terms of his end product, nice crosses to the ball. Like I said earlier, it could have been a bigger scoreline, and he was one of the reasons why, because his delivery was fantastic. So for me, fully deserves to be in that team. And my midfield, so we'll start with Saka, who's another player I would say is the positive light for Arsenal right now, and need to make sure that he stays fit and actually stays at the club as well, because there will be a lot of interest in the young player. Fantastic goal scored as well, made a couple of assists. For me, was pretty much the vocal point in the attack by providing great balls and great delivery into the box. And so for me, has to be in the team of the week, and hopefully he continues his form as the weeks go on. And Ndombele, another great performance from him, a dominant one. Probably slightly disappointing in terms of the result today, but I think after he got substituted, you could see the midfield wasn't quite right after he left, so shows his importance in the team. Bruno Fernandes, fantastic informed player right now, scoring lots of goals, assists as well, and not much to say about him. I think he fully deserves to be in that team. Ferran Torres, for me, great signing for City. When he first signed, I was a little bit surprised because of the fee, but that's due to Valencia having a lot of financial difficulties right now at the club. So they got him at 20 million, which is a bargain price. And he's been a great addition to the squad. Obviously, it takes time for foreign players to settle into the Premier League. But whenever he's come on, he's been quite prominent. I think that's his second goal this season and 7 goals in total throughout the whole season. So for me, he's showing great form. He can play on either wing, which is fantastic in terms of playing tactically. So him and Sterling can exchange positions and still be effective for the team. So for me, another great performance for him, and hopefully he continues to cement a starting spot in the lineup for Man City. So my front three, I've got Mane on the left. For me, Mane just had a great goal, scored a great goal against West Brom, and was probably not the only positive. I think the team could have done better in terms of attacking sense, but I think out of all of the attacking players, for me, he was the better player. So that's why I've gone for Mane in my team of the week. And Vardy, who, for me, scored a vital goal for Leicester in the latter stages and gave them a point at the end. So for me, that's the reason why I've picked him in the team. And Rashford in the same match was a constant threat throughout. So yeah, I think it could have been. I did have Bertrand Traore on my right wing initially, but I've taken him off because he was substituted at halftime due to the red card that Mings got, unfortunately. But he had a great game as well. So he's someone that I think will surprise a lot of people in terms of his ability. I wasn't as surprised because I've seen him play at Lyon before he joined from Chelsea, and he was their prominent goal scorer there as well. So I know, even though he plays on the right flank, he knows how to score goals playing out wide. So I'm expecting him to score a lot more goals this season. So yeah, we'll see how his season pans out there. So let's do some transfer rumors. As you know, it's January very soon, so we'll be seeing a lot more transfer rumors as time goes on. So the first transfer rumor I'd like to speak about is Gabriel Militao to Liverpool. So this story has been going around for a few days now. So the Real Madrid defender isn't a prominent figure in the team, but if you've watched him previously at Porto, it's arguable to say he's a top player. And I believe Liverpool were actually very close to signing him before he joined Real Madrid. So that's a strong indication that the hierarchy at Liverpool, the transfer committee, are big fans of the player, and that includes Klopp as well. There hasn't been a fee quote, it's just been a link right now. So for me, even though we desperately need a centre back, I don't think we'll actually sign one in January, unfortunately. The reason is because I think we've probably got a list of defenders that we'd like to go for that are a bit more of a higher caliber type of players. And at this stage, it's very difficult to sign those type of players in January unless we come with a bid that cannot be rejected. At this stage, I'm not sure if that's the stance that Liverpool have right now. So, but you never know now because Matip has been injured, and from what Klopp has said after the match, it's not a small injury. It might be an injury where he'll be off for a while. But it remains to be seen how long his layoff is there. But yeah, if I was to give my verdict, if this transfer will happen in January, it's a thumbs down. I don't see that happening, even though I do really rate the player. I think he's a good talent. I don't see that happening. So yeah, we'll leave it at that for that one. So the next player is Maxi Gomez to Arsenal. So he's a striker, Uruguayan striker from Valencia. So I mentioned earlier on, Valencia are at this minute going through financial difficulties. So they will possibly be selling clubs in the window. So they sold Ferran Torres for 20 million, and they also sold Kondogbia to Atletico for 18 million. So these are prices that you can agree that are quite low for these caliber players. Regarding Maxi Gomez, so he actually has a very big release clause, which doesn't really make a difference right now, which is 125 million. Do I think he's the right type of striker for Arsenal? I don't think he is, to be honest with you. He's pretty much a target man in terms of his style of play. Doesn't offer much in terms of speed, but has great hold-up play and can bring other players into the game and has great heading ability. He hasn't been very clinical for Valencia, but he was prior to his move at Celta Vigo. I don't think this move would happen, if I'm honest with you. And I don't think he's the type of striker that they would probably go for at this stage, especially with Aubameyang and Lacazette still there. If one of them were to leave, which for me is quite unlikely, it could be a welcomed addition. But for me, I don't see that happening, if I'm quite honest with you there. So the next transfer rumor is Folarin Balogun to Liverpool. So young 90-year-old striker from Arsenal, who's been linked to Liverpool. At this stage, I believe he's currently 6 months left in his contract. So this is the reason why he's been linked to Liverpool and I think other clubs as well. Interesting player because he's quite highly rated over there, but he doesn't tend to get that many starting games for the club. You'll probably see him more prominently in the Europa League, but me personally, I've not seen enough of him to make a pure judgment on him. I have seen highlights here and there where I feel like you can tell he's got excuse me, you can tell he's got great clinical ability in terms of his finishing. And for a 19-year-old, he's very composed in front of goal. Whereas a number of strikers at that age, I tend to rely more on their energy and pace when it comes to finishing. But he seems quite calculating the way he finishes. Like you'd think he's more of an experienced striker. So, and he can play multiple positions. So he can play on the left and can play up front. My question would be, for a Liverpool team, does he have enough quality to play as a link-up player as well? So we had a similar striker in Ryan Brewster who was also a finisher, but didn't have that ability to link up play. So that's something Klopp needs from the striker. So, so for me, I'm not too sure about it. There are strong sources saying that this move will happen in Jan. I'm giving it a thumbs down, if I'm honest with you. I just don't see it happening, to be fair. Especially because he plays as a striker and as a left winger. And at this stage, we've got too many players that play in those kind of roles. So we've got Jota, who plays left wing but can play up front. Got Minamino, who scored last week, who does the same thing as well. So for me, it's the right side that needs to be looked into a bit more. So excuse me. So for me, a player that I would personally want to be linked with, or Liverpool should go for in the summer at least, is Ismail Assar, who plays on the right hand side for Watford, but can play on the left and can play up front. So for me, a player that's predominantly from the right side should be considered. So for me, it's a no. I don't see that move happening at all. So we've got one more rumor, which is Marcel Sabitzer, an Austrian international from Leipzig. Excuse me. So this is an interesting move, actually. So he's been linked to a 45 million move in January to Tottenham. I actually can see this happening, but it would depend on Dele Alli. So Dele Alli was linked with a loan move to Paris Saint-Germain a few weeks ago, but those were rumors that didn't really have that much concrete evidence. But now with Mauricio Pochettino potentially being appointed as the new manager, there might be some legs on that rumor now. So I think it would make sense to sign a player like Marcel Sabitzer, who is predominantly a playmaker. So he normally plays box to box or as a number 10, but can play as a deep playmaker. So if you look at Tottenham's formation, he would be suited to play alongside Ndombele or Højbjerg and can play as a number 10 or as a number 8, depending on how Mourinho has set up tactically. So I actually can see this move happening in January. So I'm going to give it a thumbs up. But it would only be on the basis of Dele Alli if he leaves the club. If Dele Alli still is in January, I believe he would probably join in the summer. But I can definitely see there being some sort of truth in this rumor right now. So we've got one more rumor, and that is Luka Jovic to Wolves. So Luka Jovic, who was linked with Leicester City, I believe, during the summer, that move never materialized. He still doesn't get much game time at Real Madrid. So for me, definitely needs a move away from the club. But at this stage, I'm not sure Wolves is the right fit for him, because even though they have Jimenez who's injured, they've got Fabio Silva who played today as well as their backup striker. So I don't think they'd want a striker who's the typical number 9. They probably want someone, a forward, who can play in multiple positions. So that's why I think the rumors regarding Origi to Wolves has a bit more sort of concrete interest, because Origi can play on the left, can play on the right, but is predominantly a striker, but at least has that multifunctional ability. I can see Origi going to Wolves, in my opinion. So for me, I don't see this move happening. I think this is probably the work of the agent trying to get his client to move, because he's not getting any game time and he's not really getting that much interest either. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. So fantasy football. So unfortunately, I've just gone on to the app and the leagues haven't updated because I've just logged on an hour after the last fixture. So I'll probably either tweet about this later on tonight or tomorrow, or mention it in my next next episode. So I'll keep you guys focused on. I'll let you guys know the next episode. So just to round up the episode, we've got a couple of big games, which is a preview of match week 16, which with Everton and Man City. So even though Man City have been in great form, I can kind of see Man City winning this game, unfortunately. So I'd probably go with a 2-1 prediction there. And another game that stands out for me is Manchester United versus Wolves. That's going to be a really good match, considering how Wolves have played today and also last week. I'm gonna go with a 2-2 with that one. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, apologies, my throat is very dry today. But yeah, so that wraps us up for today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We will be back, I believe, next Thursday. So the reason why we did a show on Sunday was because the new match week 16 starts tomorrow, and games are being played on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So Thursday we'll be back at 9 p.m. So stay tuned, and we shall be back next week. Take care. Thank you.